I'm Hugh Stewart. This is News for Scotland on the Scotland Channel. A memorial event to mark the suspicious death of former independence activist and Scottish lawyer Willie McRae in 1985 was held last Saturday to raise awareness of the case. The event was organised by Yes Highlands and Islands at the spot where McRae was discovered in his car just off the A87 near Invergarry in the Highlands. More than 60 people attended. Initially, it was thought that McRae had been involved in a single vehicle accident near the banks of Loch Loyne, suffering head injuries as a result of his car leaving the road. However, it was later discovered during a hospital x-ray that he'd been shot in the back of the head. Despite this, and despite the gun involved being found outside the car, authorities immediately ruled that McRae had taken his own life in an act of suicide and have refused to hold an independent investigation into the lawyer's death ever since. Before leaving Glasgow for his weekend home in Wester Ross, McRae had revealed he'd found information that would bring down the then Thatcher government and was in good spirits before he left Glasgow for his Dorney home to prepare the documents which were never found at the crash site. He was being tailed by Special Branch. McRae had successfully fought the UK government attempts to turn the Mulwachar Hills in southwest Scotland into a nuclear dumping ground and had come to the attention of MI5 for his independence activities. The event organiser Pete Smith of Yes Highlands and Islands said the aim of the event was to raise awareness and put pressure on authorities to hold an independent inquiry into the lawyer's death, which many people believe was at the hands of the British state.
I've always believed in justice and a lot of the things that McRae believed in. And I came across this story about McRae a number of years ago, and I've gradually learned more about it and become quite intrigued by it. And the more you learn, the more intrigued you become that this is a story that has arms and legs and tentacles and all sorts of things, all sorts of unresolved issues. So what we've tried to organise on this today was to try to get some traction for the 40th, the commemoration of the 40th year since his passing, the mysterious death of Willie McRae. So going forward, we want to continue to try to get traction, with the end goal being to get a public inquiry. We want to find out who killed Willie McRae and why. What was the big secret that he went to the grave with? He knew something. There's either been the most clumsy kind of effort in investigating what happened, or there's a cover-up and a conspiracy. And certainly it points towards the latter. But an inquiry would get to the bottom of all of that, and with people a lot higher up the food chain have had been thwarted in their attempts to get an inquiry. So this is another attempt, and we're hopefully going to get more traction through using social media, through using the filmed media, and anything else that we could do.
So today's event was an absolute success for Yes Highlands and Islands Network, a group of 25 groups, Yes groups across Scotland, across the Highlands and Islands. A great turnout, people came from far and wide, and for me the question is, we're 40 years on, there's questions remain and there's answers required. And today was just fantastic because we had people who had actually known Willie. In fact, we had the policeman who was the last person to see him, who knew he was being followed by Special Branch guys. And he, a few hours later he was murdered. And I passed that road. I've lived in Skye for 50 years, and I've passed that and thought about Willie. But for it to be brought to life today, it's really hit home to me.
A documentary, Who Shot Willie McRae, will be shown on the Scotland Channel from April the 17th. Don't miss it. Details of all our forthcoming films, as well as films which can be watched on demand, can be found on our website, that's thescotlandchannel.tv, or on our own YouTube channel, that's youtube.com/thescotlandchannel/videos. Argyll and Bute Council is taking to the skies to deliver items like school meals by drone to places in the islands and parts of the west coast. The council has partnered with drone company Sky Sports to test out the scheme with the help of $250,000 from a Department of Science RPF fund. Councillors have now approved the report and the trial, and they hope the region will become a hub for drone-based business. In addition to school meals, the trial, which partnered with the Royal Mail and NHS Scotland, also delivered mail and medication to hospitals between Islay and Jura. Drones could also be used for vegetation management or to check on power lines, and tests have gone ahead from Dunoon to Tainault. John Armour for Argyll and Bute said that country and island locations were ideal for drone use because they make for quicker deliveries to faraway communities and also because of the safety aspect of not being close to aviation. However, in conjunction with the CAA, that's the Civil Aviation Authority, there are plans to locate a drone advanced air mobility hub at Oban Airport. This project will probably be funded by $4 million from the Rural Growth Deal programme, subject to the application making a sound business case. A former Yes Scotland researcher has urged the SNP leadership to use the Holyrood 26 elections as a launchpad for a permanent independence campaign. Glasgow councillor Angus Miller, who has been nominated to stand for selection for the Glasgow Annisland constituency, is leading his bid with a call for Scottish independence to be front and centre of the SNP's 2026 campaign. Miller hopes his party can use the Holyrood election to first kick off a wider rejuvenation of the movement and then for a permanent full-time campaign to use the momentum to take forward the case for independence. He added, the Yes Scotland campaign of 2014 was a great example of how to bring together people across the independence movement and inspire new people to join the movement because it had a dedicated team of full-time staff. Having that kind of broad campaign with all the different groups, all the different people of all walks of life coming to build the case for independence, that's what we need to get back and to recapture, he said. Donald Trump's 10% trade levies on the UK are set to hammer the Scottish whisky industry, says the SNP, which has urged Chancellor Rachel Reeves to reverse the 10.1% hike in duty imposed by the previous Tory administration and the 3.61% increase by her government, which came into effect in February. The SNP's Member of Parliament, Graham Leadbitter, whose constituency, Moray West, Nairn and Strathspey, is home to 1/3 of Scotland's whisky distilleries, called for the duty rises to be reversed in the light of the American president's tariffs against countries around the world, which has set stock markets tumbling. Whisky makes up a quarter of all Scots exports to the US. When Trump was last in office, tariffs imposed then saw the Scottish whisky industry lose more than £600 million. The Scottish Government has asked the UK Labour government in London to think again about the Conservatives' law which replaced the massive EU single market with the much smaller UK internal market, as it was labelled. This law from 2020 saw the London Government take powers away from the Scottish Government as the UK left the European Union, which Scotland voted to stay in. The Scottish Parliament did not consent to these changes, but its objections were ignored by the government of Boris Johnson, the self-styled Minister for the Union. The new law could mean, for example, that substandard food products not allowed under Scottish regulations would be sold here. If UK standards fall below the Scottish standards, it's a UK version which would be enforced. To deal with any such clashes, the Scottish Government has proposed a new consultation framework to be agreed by the UK and the 3 devolved administrations. This proposal comes in a position paper which the Scottish Government published on the 7th of April. Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes said, the Scottish Government's position is clear. We must see the full restoration of the powers of the Scottish Parliament. The Internal Market Act should be repealed and the UK Government must work with the devolved governments to an agreed and workable alternative. Ms Forbes added that the Tory law gives UK ministers in London open-ended power to nullify laws passed by a democratically elected and accountable legislature. The new proposal, entitled Internal Market Act 2020 Position Paper, is available now on the Scottish Government website. That's on www.gov.scot. Here's a quick look at the economic prospects both for Scotland and the UK. Now that economists had time to analyse the latest economic news from the UK Government's financial statements last March. That's the one that cut billions from UK social spending. Firstly, economic growth is expected to be slow, averaging about 1% for next year and the year after. Unfortunately, inflation will be higher than that, although it fell to 2.8% in February. Bad news coming in right now, though, as the new financial year kicks in, comes in the form of rises to national insurance. This is a UK tax paid by businesses in Scotland, but set and collected by the UK government in London. The effect will be to increase the costs to business and, according to economists, is already making firms here pessimistic about the future. The Fraser-Vallender Institute, Strathclyde University, reports that 94% of Scots firms expect cost pressures to increase in the first half of this tax year, with the majority concerned about the NI increase. The Labour government spring statement a couple of weeks ago did produce a small increase in the Scottish Government funding for this year, but that will be short-lived. Over the next few years, the Scottish Government will face an increasingly challenging financial position. Current estimates show the Scottish Government being cut by nearly 900 million by the year 2930. Joe Souza, who's an economist at Fraser-Vallender, said, "We'll learn more about the Scottish implications of the spring statement when the Scottish Fiscal Commission publishes its next forecast in May, but it certainly doesn't look like being good news." All this is based on calculations before the US President launched his trade war, which will slow down growth in the world economy by reducing trade and putting prices up. John Swinney, First Minister, said last week that President Trump's policies will be damaging to the Scottish and UK economies, as general import taxes were set at 10%. That winds up our stories for this week. Join us again on the Scotland Channel every Friday night from 7 p.m. Don't forget, once released, you can view all our shows anytime on the Scotland Channel. Support us by linking, sharing and subscribing to our YouTube page, thescotlandchannel.tv. Thanks for watching.